exaltation. We are Hope 103.1 FM.
You didn't come for the strong, you're here for the broken. This is my song of intercession, God. Only you know. Only you know how it feels inside. This pain when you try to hide it. Afraid to cry for help, you smile and drown it out. Only you know how it feels inside. To try and try and try and try and try and fail. Only you know why it's 8 o'clock and he's not home. Out with his boys drinking, 'cause he knows when he goes home and opens that door, it's another night of fighting or silence. Oh, she's cutting up deep, and they just think that she's crazy, but you know better, doc. You know she's being touched in the wrong way. Oh, doctor, can you heal him? I pray, 'cause if you don't, he will not make it. Doctor, can you heal her? I pray, 'cause if you don't, she won't make it till the morning. Doctor, can you heal them? I pray, 'cause if you don't, they will not make it. Doctor, can you heal them? I pray, 'cause if you don't, they won't see the morning. Oh, 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 oh. Only you know how she feels inside. These feelings she's trying to hide, that's for another girl. It's not supposed to be. Only you know she prayed and prayed. How much she is afraid to get the help she needs, that your blood can set her free. Oh, only you know she's going to church but losing hope, 'cause he's tired of repenting for the same things over and over. It's almost over for him. Only you know I'm surrounded by broken people, and they need a hero 'cause they can't fix what's wrong on the inside. Your boy's here to see them. Doctor, can you heal her? I pray, 'cause if you don't, she's not gonna make it. Doctor, can you heal her? I pray, yeah, 'cause if you don't, come, no, doctor, can you heal them? I pray, yeah, 'cause if you don't, doctor, can you heal them? I pray, 'cause if you don't, oh, they're not gonna make it. Never. Promise that you're the healer. Promise that you're the healer. By your stripes we are healed, healer. By your stripes we are healed, healer. By your stripes we are healed.
What a pleasant good evening it is, and I am your host, Dr. Xenia Louison, as we welcome everyone to Heavenly Medicine. As the song said, by your stripes we are healed, healer. So today, joining with us, we have a special guest. So even before we begin, I'd like to welcome all our viewers, whether you're joining us on YouTube, the YouTube platform, or Facebook platform, or on the air, 103.1 FM. I just want to say a pleasant good evening to you all. Thank you for joining with us. Thank you for locking on Heavenly Medicine. Today, our topic will be the heart. So, as people will say, matters of the heart. Maybe. Okay. But it's the heart. So we're looking at the human heart. So we have a special guest, guys, with us today, and it is Dr. Marcus Cox. Okay. So, Dr. Marcus, we just want to welcome you. Thank you for joining us on Heavenly Medicine. It's with us. So,
No problem. I'm glad to
say
be
hello
here.
to our viewers.
Cutting up deep, and they just think she's
Hi,
crazy.
how is everybody doing out there?
You know she's being touched in the
Happy
heart.
to be here. Happy to be part of the discussion.
Okay. All right. So before we even begin, guys, I just want to I am so grateful to have Dr. Cox with us. It's something that, just to let the public know that heavenly medicine it's actually a intervention. It's actually a tool that we are using to inform the public on the matters of health. Also, we also would like to not just health, but and we always said that heavenly medicine is something that we want to be able to give back to our community via health, whether it's mental health, physical health, social health, emotional health. So we're so grateful to have Dr. Cox with us because not only is Dr. Cox a medical doctor, but he's also a son of the soil. So we're really proud of you, Dr. Cox, for even taking this time out of your busy schedule to share information with us. I'm sure we're truly grateful. So we really appreciate you this evening. Just to
Thank you.
share with the public, I'd just like to share a little bit about Dr. Cox with you guys. Okay. So, first of all, he was born and raised in the village of Manjaloo, St. George's, right here in Grenada. His interest in medicine came first, he said, at a very young age. And he said it was basically out of pure curiosity, right, as to how the body works. So, as a result, he became very interested in this area of cardiology. He also had a passion in that area because he felt that it also affected his family members. There was some family members, I think you said that it also impacted as well,
Yeah.
right? So also that gave him even a greater passion for that area. Just to add, I'd just like to add a little bit about Dr. Cox for us. So he later on attended the Grenada Boys Secondary School. It is there that he really developed a liking for the science and became fully committed to the path that he's actually on now. Dr. Cox attended the T.A. Marisho Community College, where he majored in natural sciences. He later then became a teacher at the St. Joseph Convent, St. George's. He then became a graduate of the St. George's University, where he graduated with honors and continued on to an internal medicine residency at the Michaels Medical Center in Newark, New Jersey, where he was selected to be one of the chief residents. Today, he is currently completing his training in cardiovascular disease at the University of Connecticut, Hartford Hospital Program, right? So Dr. Cox, his great interests include healthcare disparities and interventional cardiology, for which he himself right now will be actually doing an additional year of training at the University of Chicago North Shore program, right? Once he has completed his course. But we are truly grateful to have you, Dr. Cox, sharing with us as we expound this evening on the topic, the human heart. So, before we begin, if you want to say hello to any, family, friends, you can go right ahead. This is Heavenly Medicine, so we know how support is, and we really appreciate that. So, again, you're a Grenadian guy, so, feel free, say hello, give us an
Thank you.
introduction.
Thank you for the kind introduction. I mean, I don't think I can top that introduction. But I'd just like to say hi to all my family and friends that are tuned in. And we're going to cover some important stuff that I think is really relevant, especially to our population. So I hope you guys get something out of this talk.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so we're just gonna start. So Dr. Cox, so in general, right, we want to talk about the heart. So naturally, when we think about the heart, like if we weren't in science or so, and you think about the heart, like every time you will see, Valentine's, there's this nice, pretty red heart, and it's like it's all about love. And, this is what, most times as kids, you're younger and you hear the heart. That's what really comes to mind because, when it's Valentine's at school, they have this nice decorated red heart.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
even sometimes, so that's a general thing when, we look at the heart. Never would we actually see a picture of the actual anatomy of the real
Mhm,
human heart.
mhm.
So, today we want to expound more on the human heart and what it actually looks like, how it works, so we want you to take us through this journey. All right.
O-
So, I'm just going to
Okay.
ask in general, tell us, what is the human heart? What is the heart?
Okay. Well, like you said, it's not what we usually see for Valentine's with the red boxes. It doesn't really look like that. But I do like to think, even though an adult, I do like to think that at times, that's our seat of passion. I love the heart, so I like saying nice things about the heart. So if you
Mhm.
tell me that's where love comes from, that's where passion comes from, I'll agree with it.
Okay.
But in terms of our body's needs, our heart is just simply a pump, and it just functions to pump blood throughout the body. What it does is that there's four chambers. We divide it into two halves, right and left side. The right side receives blood from the body. In the top chamber, pumps it to the bottom chamber. It goes into the lungs where we have oxygenation, which is just providing oxygen to the blood and making the blood fill with oxygen and oxygen rich. It returns to the left top half of the heart, flows into the left bottom half, and then we pump it out throughout our entire body. And we need that blood for numerous things. That's how we stay conscious. That's how our brain gets to function. That's how our heart gets to function. Our kidneys. We basically need blood everywhere in the body. If you don't have blood flow to a certain part of the body, it dies. So to me, the heart, of course, is the most important organ in the body. Other people may say differently.
Okay. All right. Well said. Okay. So, in terms of so we looked at the anatomy and we talked about the different chambers. Now, why is the heart so important to us as human beings? What role does the heart play in our actual health?
So like I started stating a little bit before, it provides oxygen, nutrition, and everything really the body needs to function and to survive to every single part of the body. Without the heart, without that pump,
Mhm.
we would not survive unless we were laying flat all the time and we didn't need the pump. But unfortunately, we live upright and we need that driving force. So the heart is like the driving force of the body. It's like the battery. It's just there, ticking away. And really, it's just delivery of oxygen and nutrients to every part of the body.
Okay. All right. So in the event, now when we talk about the heart, and you just told us, okay, so it's a pump, it drives all the blood towards the body, oxygenated blood, and so on to our tissues and all of that. Now, how does it relate with high blood pressure? So many persons would be like, okay, I'm diagnosed, doctor, with high blood pressure. A matter of fact, I don't really understand it. I don't know what it's about. How does high blood pressure relate to the heart? How do they work together? Are they or do they have a relationship? Do they stand alone? Are they isolated entities?
So they definitely go hand in hand. So, for example, my field of studies right now is cardiovascular medicine. So it's not just about the heart. The vascular part is about the blood vessels. So if you think of the heart as a pump that supplies blood to various organs and various parts of the body, the blood vessels are the pipelines. So the heart is a pump, the blood vessels are the pipelines, and that pipeline is what carries the blood to different parts of the body. So anything that happens with the pipelines can affect the heart. Our blood pressure is what's responsible for maintaining forward flow of blood. So the heart pumps it, it goes into the blood vessels, and the blood vessels help distribute that blood to different parts of the body. And the blood vessels, really, in combination with the brain, they help regulate which parts of the body get like what amount of blood. Who do I preferentially give more blood? Who do I give less blood? Those kinds of things. And that driving pressure, it's needed, but if it gets too high, if the pressure inside the pipe itself gets too high, then we start to suffer with what's known as high blood pressure. And what has to happen is that if the pressure in the pipeline is high enough or too high, then the heart, which is the pump, has to pump extra hard to get over that pressure or to overcome that pressure. So you really don't want you want that pressure to be high enough so that blood gets to different parts of the body, but you don't want it too high where the heart has to work extra hard to overcome that force to drive blood forward.
Okay, all right. So, in terms of the blood pressure, what would be a normal value for one's blood pressure? And
Okay.
what would be the value if someone is diagnosed now with hypertension? Can you take us through that?
So the values have been changing recently, and depends on where you look at it. So I will talk from the AHA, the American Heart Association, because that's what I'm practicing right now.
Mhm.
And normally we consider anything less than 120 over 80. We consider that to be normal. I think you just had the slide with it up there. Anything 120 to 129 over 80, yeah, we consider that elevated. And then we get really concerned when you start going to systolic. So these are two pressures, your systolic and your diastolic. If you've ever seen a blood pressure machine, the first number is your systolic, the second number is your diastolic. And once you start going into the 130 to 139 range in the systolics, that's considered stage one hypertension.
Mhm.
And then the diastolic pressure is in the 80s to 89. And that's when we start to get a little bit concerned and we start taking active measures to try and reduce that.
Okay. All right. So, as you said, we take measures as to try to reduce that. So, what are some of the things that we can So, as you said, we were talking about the blood pressure and how it relates to the heart. So, and you mentioned that it's when the pressure now within the vessels and so on becomes now high, right? Or the resistance becomes increased. That's when now our actual blood pressure, both the systolic and diastolic, now is elevated. So, how can we put these two together for someone to understand that blood pressure links with the heart?
Right. So, like we said, the heart is a pump, but
Mhm.
it's made up of muscular tissue. It's just
Right.
all muscles, just
Okay.
like your arm, just like your legs. And you know, if you exercise your arm or your legs, what happens? It gets bigger, right? You exercise the muscle enough, it gets bigger. It's the
Yes.
same concept with the heart. The heart gets bigger, and unfortunately, having a big heart, as as some people think that's a good thing. In
Yeah.
medical terms, it's a bad thing. Of
Yes.
course, you should have a big heart if we're talking about generosity, but for medicine, that's not such a good thing. The bigger the muscles in the heart, the more blood the heart itself requires, and that
Mhm.
can lead to really bad things down the line. It can lead to the pump failing itself, or it can lead to other issues with the blood vessels that supplies the heart, which can lead to heart attacks. So there's a lot of bad things that can happen when we leave our blood pressure unchecked for too long.
Okay. All right. And I love the fact that you said when you leave your blood pressure unchecked, right? So what are some of the advice you would give to persons that are concerned, or sometimes high blood pressure is very silent, so sometimes persons do not know that they're actually suffering from hypertension? So what are some of the advice or recommendations that you would like to give in the event that you're concerned or you're not sure?
So I like the word that you used. You said silent, because before hypertension, well, I guess it still is. It's known as a silent killer because you don't know you're hypertensive. Most people don't have symptoms. Some people may experience some symptoms, such as headaches. Some people may have some dizziness, lightheadedness at times that may hint towards hypertension, although those are not really too specific.
Yes.
But in most cases, there's no like single symptom you could point to. Like I can't walk up on the street and say, "Oh yeah, that person has hypertension," or
I get it.
somebody comes and say, "Oh, my back hurts." So I was like, "Yes, hypertension." We can't do that. So the
Right.
only way to know whether or not you have high blood pressure is to have it measured. And we normally recommend for most adults to see their primary care physician at least once a year, even if you consider yourself healthy, at least to
Mhm.
do a general checkup so you can have your blood pressure checked. You can check for other things, of course, as well. But this is a hypertension talk, so we'll stick to the blood pressure. But at least once a year, you should see a physician just for screening purposes. Even if you consider yourself to be in health, to be healthy, good condition, at least once a year.
Right, great. And also, would you also recommend having a blood pressure machine also at home, a family machine at home, where
Yeah.
other members also can assist you in taking the blood pressure? So you're
Oh
at
yeah.
least have an idea, where what is your normal like, what is your optimal value? So it even so, So even if a patient is somewhat pre-hypertensive, or they realize that they're somewhat getting closer to being hypertensive, they can start working on that. And as you said, first thing first, you go to see your primary care physician. From there, I guess you would get your consultation and advice as to, where to begin. But it's always good to have that machine at home.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, if you can afford one, if you have hypertension and you're on medication, for sure you should have a blood pressure machine. Once you can afford it, you should be checking your pressure regularly to make sure it's well controlled, not just when you go to see your doctor. And yeah, if you can afford it and you can, it's always a good idea to have it at home so you can check it when you need to and make sure that you're not becoming hypertensive. Because the
Yes.
main thing is to stay ahead of it and not wait until it happens to react.
Yes, definitely. So I'm going to ask, so what are some of the preventative, like primary preventative measures that we can take to prevent us from getting to that stage of being a hypertensive person?
So I think the one of the biggest factors that we have in hypertension is that a lot of the times we have a very high salt diet, especially in the Caribbean. We do like to season our
Yeah.
food. I know we put like onions and garlic and stuff, but sometimes we use the seasoning powders or the over the counter seasoning combinations, and those really have a lot of salts in them. If you're talking about canned food and canned vegetables, canned peas, things like that, those really have a high salt content.
Yes.
And that's one of the biggest issues with hypertension. Because people like salt. Salt makes food taste better.
Tastes
So
good. Mhm.
everybody wants to eat good tasting food. So we tend to overdo it with salt. So that's one of the biggest things. Reducing your salt intake, reading labels, seeing how much salt is in your food, how much salt per serving, how much salt per can or box, whatever it may be.
Okay.
Another thing is diet and sorry, exercise, aerobic exercise. If you can do some exercise, if you can do 30 minutes a day, 3 to 5 times a week, that usually helps as well with lowering the blood pressure. Just going for a light jog, a light run, nothing too crazy.
Yes.
It has been proven to lower your blood pressure and lower your blood cholesterol, so that's good for you as well. That'll be the two biggest things. Another thing that plays a part, especially for us as we are of African descent, is our
Mhm.
genetics, and that we have no control over.
Mhm. Yes. So, good thing you got into the statistics a little bit as you mentioned our ethnicity. So, in terms of the ethnic groups, right, from your practice, what are some of which ethnic group you would say are suffering the most with hypertension as well as cardiac or cardiovascular diseases? Which ethnic group you say actually is suffering the most and the one that is the least?
Okay. So where I am, my population is a little bit skewed. We have predominantly Caucasians or white. Then the second most dominant race is Hispanic, and then it's African American. So
Mhm.
there are two races that contribute a higher percentage of the population than us. And currently in this city that I'm in, it's the Hispanics that we see more of with hypertension and problems with hypertension. But in my previous city in Newark, New Jersey, where there were a lot of people of African descent, it will be the African Americans that would have a lot of issues with their blood pressure.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. And in terms of the sex, in terms of gender, right? Most likely, what statistics you would say would you be seeing more men suffering with cardiovascular diseases as per women?
Yeah, definitely, men are more predisposed to cardiovascular disease. It has a lot to do with the hormones as well. We don't have estrogen, and it's thought that estrogen has some protective effects. It does cause vasodilation, which is a fancy way of saying it makes the pipes open up, the blood vessels open up.
Yes.
So it kind of helps with hypertension. So you definitely see it earlier and more frequently in males. In women, a lot of the times it happens later in life, but it can happen early in life as well.
Okay. All right. Okay. So, doctor, when we get to a stage where now you're diagnosed, right? You're diagnosed by your family practitioner or general doctor, right? You're now diagnosed with hypertension, right? Whether it's stage one, stage two. Now,
Mhm.
what would be some of the treatments that are readily available to treat hypertension?
Okay. Well, the first thing we do is normally when we diagnose people with hypertension, especially if they're of younger age, especially if they have really elevated blood pressure, is we try to look for reversible causes. There are a few reversible causes of hypertension. For people who are obese, overweight, one of the biggest things is sleep apnea. So if you have friends or family members that snore a lot, like really loudly, sometimes at night they will seem to stop breathe. They may need to get tested for that, as that can contribute. It plays a big role in hypertension or high
Yes.
blood pressure.
Mhm.
We will check the thyroid hormones. People with thyroid disease, it's called hyperthyroidism, can have high um, elevated blood pressure, even hypo as well at times.
Mhm.
Um, we check on the kidneys. There are certain hormones produced by the kidneys. We need to make sure that those aren't out of balance and it's leading to the high blood pressure. So that's some of the first steps we do. Make sure there's nothing that we can reverse. Because if we can reverse something, then we do that, and hopefully that makes the person better. Then we look, if there are no reversible causes, we describe it as essential or primary hypertension, meaning that it's just hypertension that you have on your own, whether it's because it's a high sodium diet, whether it's because you just got bad genetics, but there's nothing we can do to reverse it, but we can treat it. Like I
Mhm.
said before, the first thing, diet, exercise, low salt diet, getting some aerobic exercise in. Those are two big things when it comes to high blood pressure. But the other thing is medications, and they go hand in hand. That exercise and medication go all hand in hand. I wouldn't just say, okay, here, take this pill and it's going to fix all your problems. No, I'm going to give you a pill, but I'm also going to tell you, like, hey, maybe you want to start checking how much salt is in your food. Maybe you want to start cutting back on the salt,
Lifestyle modification.
things like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, definitely. All right. So you mentioned, so we talked about, all right, so we're at treatment, right?
Yeah.
So after primary or asking your patient to change their lifestyle. So we're looking at lifestyle modifications, and now we have moved on from lifestyle modifications. And what are some of the basic medication that you would administer?
So it depends on we do look at the ethnicity of our patients when we're choosing our
Mhm.
medication.
Yes.
One of the mainstay of therapies is something called an ACE inhibitor, an ARB,
Yeah.
angiotensin receptor blocker. It works really well with Caucasians and Hispanics a
Mhm.
bit, but unfortunately, it doesn't work as well in people of African descent. It's
Mhm.
just based on our genetics. So we tend to use other medications, one of which are known as thiazide diuretics.
Mhm.
So, as the name says, it's a diuretic. It will make you pee,
Mhm.
and the hope of that pill is that when you pee out a lot of the salt content in your body to
Okay.
help you with the blood pressure. Um, Another one we will give is something called amlodipine,
Mhm.
which just acts to make the blood pressure, the blood vessels, sorry, dilate or get bigger to release some of that pressure in the vessels themselves.
Okay. All right. So I know for sure our public is quite aware of the amlodipine. They're quite aware of these calcium channel blockers, the diuretics. I know patients are very because we they're used widely here, especially
Yes.
also the ACE inhibitors as so are the ARBs as well. You know, but can you tell us some of the difficulties that a lot of physicians are facing is in terms of educating some of the patients when it comes to the herbal medicine along with the conventional medicine. So
Okay.
I'm gonna ask you based on certain questions I myself has also had. Doctor, would it be okay for you for me to, the patient, right?
Yeah.
To be using my medication along with my garlic water. What is the impact of garlic water? What does garlic water do? And would it be okay to use garlic water along with my medication?
So yeah, so the garlic water, that's definitely a famous one. Like back in Grenada, you hear it a lot. So your pressure high, like drink some garlic water and it'll bring it right down. So I'm not sure where the theory came from. I'm not sure how good it is. I don't know whether it works or it doesn't work, so I can't comment on that. We
Mhm.
do know that our medications that we have, they all came from somewhere, right? Most of our medications came from plants.
Yes.
So there is some, I guess, some weight to things like that. Like I don't just discount herbal medicine because most of the medications that we got, at least initially, came from plants.
That is correct.
Um, the important thing though is that if you're on medications and you want to try herbal supplements, whatever you want to do, it's your body, you know it best. That's your decision to make. But you should always just make sure your doctor is aware.
Mhm.
Because there may be some things in those herbal remedies or herbal medications that may interact with what you're taking from the doctor, that may counteract what you're taking from the doctor, and you don't really want that to happen. So you should definitely let your doctor be aware. I think one of the biggest issues we have is okay, people say drink garlic water, but how much should I drink? Should I use one garlic clove, two garlic cloves? Should I drink a glass, two glasses?
Mhm.
Like it's not something that has been tried and tested and quantified. That's
That's
why I always prefer like medicines because they've been tried, tested, and quantified. So I know if I give you X amount, I'm supposed to see Y response. Um,
exactly.
but like I said, if somebody wants to try their herbal medicine, because I've heard lots of testimonies from patients, from people I know back home,
Mhm.
who would swear on herbal medicine, and who knows, maybe it did work. But
Mhm.
you should always consult your doctor before starting a herbal medication, because you never know.
Yes, and I also like the fact that you mentioned that because in terms of the interaction, that's the part I think that really it's the actual interaction between the conventional drug and the actual herb, because the herb is not we don't have much research on it as per se, so we don't know what other composition component or what that is in it that can actually affect or play a role on the efficacy of the actual conventional drug. Not only
Exactly.
that, sometimes, as you just said, the you we don't have that much research, but we know from experience, we know from other people's testimonials about the garlic water and how effective the garlic water is, or the garlic on a whole.
Mhm.
But then when they combine together, you don't know how much it's actually going to drop the actual blood pressure. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that we really have been working with a lot of patients as to, understanding that it could actually be effective, yes, but combining them can really cause a serious problem. And what can
Yeah.
happen, it can drop the blood pressure so low that you become, instead of hypertensive, you become hypo, right? Where it now has
Yeah.
dropped below its optimal or healthy level, and now you're in trouble, you
Yeah.
know. So it's something that it's a battle, because we have a society or a community that believe in herbal medicine, as and nothing is wrong with that, but we have a difficulty in now when it has now passed the primary preventative stage, it has now passed the herbal healing stage, it's now chronic, and it cannot now be reversed with herbal supplements. So it's very hard now to get them to actually, understand that if you take the medication, and or you're taking it, sometimes even just the whole compliance,
Mhm.
just sometimes compliance and adherence, because as you said, you don't know what one leaf will do, what two leaves will do. You don't really know
Mhm.
the impact. So it's dangerous. And, it's something that a lot of physicians within the community now have to get to learn a lot about the herbal medicines, a lot about the natural remedies that's out there. So we could
Yeah.
actually understand better and understand our patients better, in a more holistic way, in understanding the person, understanding their beliefs, understanding, okay, why they would consider this versus the actual conventional medicine, and then try to counsel them through it, so that we could get a better compliance.
Yeah.
So this is something that we're trying to educate a lot of the public about compliance and how important it is to not just um taking your medication also on time. Yeah, and just following through with the actual regimen that is given to you in order to see results. Because sometimes it's not overnight, right?
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
overnight, and
Yep.
it takes a while. I've had patients say, you know what, from the time I started this, from the 2 days after I started to feel sick, my head started to feel light. But can you just tell us a little bit more why you think patients would be having those type of mild side effects from starting to take those medication, or
Okay.
even just the basic amlodipine on a whole?
So one of the things that I always do whenever I start somebody on a new medication, I always inform them that these are the common side effects. These are things that would happen. These are things that may happen to you that you should expect. And I always find like if you're upfront about those things, you tell them what to expect. When it happens, it's not much of a shock. They're like, oh yeah, you told me this would happen. And
Yes.
most side effects of most medication, well, I shouldn't say that. A lot of the side effects sometimes are temporary. So
Yes.
things would happen like when you just start a medication, but after some time it will go away.
Mhm.
And most patients, if you really have that conversation with them, you say, hey, you may experience this, you may experience that. It may be temporary, it may go away. But then you show them the benefit of the medication of like, hey, I'll drop your blood pressure by this amount.
Mhm.
Most people are okay with that as long as whatever side effects or whatever feelings they develop are tolerable.
Yes.
Most times you should not really get dizziness, lightheadedness. It could be that maybe the dose of the medication is a little bit too strong. Maybe you're getting a little high, like you said, hypotensive, low blood pressure.
Mhm. Mhm.
Or maybe the medication is not strong enough and you're still hypertensive and that's causing the dizziness and the lightheadedness. With amlodipine, because it causes the blood vessels to open up and expand, what happens is that you get fluid leaking out of the blood vessels
Mhm.
and it pulls. And in most cases, that happens in your legs. So some
Yes.
people will see like their legs or their feet start swelling up.
Mhm.
That's one of the most common reactions. It's not severe. It doesn't happen like it doesn't blow up. But you would notice like you would see like your shoe marks, your sock marks, things like that. And
Okay.
usually once you lift that area, if you lift your feet up, the fluid will drain out and it will go down quite quickly. That's one of the most common side effects of amlodipine. There are others, of course, because of how it acts. It may cause constipation, especially at the higher doses. We normally tell patients to make sure they have adequate fluid and fiber intake to try and avoid that. Yeah,
Okay. All right. And it's sometimes the body just need a little bit time, a little bit more time to acclimatize to this medication. Because remember, most patients when they're hypertensive, they don't know. So they've been walking daily, being
yeah,
hypertensive with this high blood pressure. So it's their normal. Is
yeah,
their actual normal. So it's like trying to bring the body works in with an equilibrium. So it's trying
yeah,
to know when it's dropping, it starts to become unfamiliar to the body.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So that is something too, we usually would say, it has to take a little while for the body to climatize to this new
yep.
um blood
To the
pressure,
new normal.
the new normal, because you actually been operating on something that was abnormal, but it was normal. It
Yeah,
was normal to your body at that time. So it does take a while. Yeah.
yeah.
So okay, so we looked at the treatment of hypertension, right? And what now, how does hypertension lead to different types of cardiovascular disease? For example, like why would high cholesterol um, lead to any type of heart disease? How does hypertension or high cholesterol lead to any type of heart disease?
Okay. So I mentioned briefly earlier about high blood pressure and some of the things that are a consequence of high blood pressure, which is why we're kind of active in identifying patients with high blood pressure or at risk of high blood pressure. And by the way, I forgot to mention this earlier, but one thing that may have you at increased risk is if you have family members who have high blood pressure. So I know
Definitely.
in Grenada, like we're a little bit secretive with our health information, but
Oh,
especially
yes,
if you're
indeed.
diagnosed, yeah, we are. If you're diagnosed with
Mhm,
high blood pressure at an early age, you
mhm.
should probably let your family members know, hey, you should probably go get checked, have your blood pressure checked to make sure like you don't have the same thing.
Yes.
The reason why we're so aggressive is it's very detrimental on the
Mhm.
heart. Of course, like I said, I love the heart. The heart is my favorite organ, so I'm going to talk about that. But it can also harm other organs. So, like we said, silent killer. You don't know you're hypertensive. You live hypertensive for a long time.
Mhm.
One of the really bad or devastating things that can happen if you have like weak blood vessels in your brain, which
Mhm.
are known as aneurysms.
Mhm.
High blood pressure can cause one of those to rupture or burst, and that can be fatal in most cases.
Yes.
So you would die from one of those. It can cause the blood vessels, so there's large blood vessels coming from the heart going down the entire chest and the abdomen, supplying blood to like the legs, the gut, everywhere else. it can cause tears in those blood vessels, and that, of course, can lead to you dying as well.
Mhm.
High blood pressure, it can, over time, it will cause constant damage to the kidneys, and you
Mhm.
can end up with renal failure on dialysis because your kidneys are just shut down because you've been hypertensive for so long. So that can happen too. But with the heart, the two main things we're concerned about is one, we're worried about how it affects the heart, how it causes changes in the heart. Remember, I talked about the heart being a muscle, and that muscle starts to get thick. What
Yes.
ends up happening is that the muscle will grow until it eventually gets tired and just can't overcome the high blood pressure, and you end up with what's known as heart failure. Or because the muscles got so big, the blood supply to the heart itself
Mhm.
is no longer enough for the heart, and that puts you
Mhm.
at increased risk of having a heart attack.
Okay, all right. So, in the event that we have patients with elevated lipid values, elevated cholesterol values, now how does that impact the heart, and why should they be concerned with those abnormal values?
So that's really important, especially if you have other risk factors such as diabetes or high blood pressure.
Mhm.
What happens is that the cholesterol, it goes into the blood vessels around the heart. It just deposits and it sits there, and it forms what we call a plaque. So if you think of like I said, the blood vessels are just pipes. Just think of it as the pipe being clogged. It's partially clogged because there's this deposit of fat inside of the blood vessel.
Mhm.
And what happens is that that deposit is soft. It's not, most times it's soft. It's not really hard or stabilized. And what can happen is that it can break off and rupture, and it can close off the entire blood vessel. And when that happens, you have a heart attack.
Okay, all right. So, a heart attack. So, doc, what's a heart attack?
So a heart attack is any event that leads to death in the cells of the heart. Okay,
Okay.
so it can happen either one of two ways. Either, like I said before, there can be an acute occlusion of one of the vessels around the heart, so that can lead to a heart attack. Or it's just that there's too much heart, not enough blood supply in the heart for whatever reason, whether you're bleeding out, whether you're sick from something else, just not enough blood going to the heart, and that can cause death to the tissue around the heart. The one that we're always really concerned about is the one where there's a sudden blockage in the vessels around the heart.
Okay. And is there anything that one can do to avoid getting a heart attack?
So some of the things we discussed earlier, definitely controlling your blood pressure, controlling your cholesterol.
Mhm.
If you're diabetic, you have to control that as well. We
Mhm.
talked about healthy diet. We talked about exercise. Those are all things that can help prevent you from having a heart attack. Of course, there are some people that are just genetically disposed to having heart disease and heart attack. There are some things that can be done for them if they're identified early, but unfortunately, most of the damage in those cases is done early in life. And we usually get to see those patients sometimes when they're in their 30s or in their early 40s, and they present with like a massive heart attack.
Wow. So, in the case of someone having a heart attack, it's something for the public to also know, like, what are some of the signs or symptoms when you notice that someone might be having a heart attack? Because it could be something that we just like, oh, I'm not feeling too well. I'm just feeling a little nauseated.
Yeah,
If we are now more alert, more conscious as to some
right,
of the signs, now we'll be able to identify it very quickly, and then we are able to rush this person immediately to the emergency room or the emergency department or hospital. So, what are some of the signs or early signs or symptoms that you usually would see with a person that may have a heart attack? Sometimes I understand it might be at home, so we don't always get to see it at A&E because they already came in already with the heart
right.
attack. But what are the early signs that can actually be seen as early signs of a heart attack?
So I mean, one of the most common things, and what we always look for when people are coming in with heart attacks, we ask
Mhm.
them about pain, having pain in the chest. So
Mhm.
most people describe a feeling, sensation that there's a tightness, a squeezing, or pressure like an elephant is sitting on their chest.
Mhm.
Some people describe the pain going up to their left jaw. Some people describe it going to their shoulder and left arm.
Mhm.
So that's like the most common description of the pain. Sometimes it can be sharp as well. Usually the pain occurs when you're doing something, some sort of activity, you try to do something, then boom, all of a sudden you got that pain and it just won't go away. So that's one of the things to look for. It depends on which blood vessel around the heart is affected. You may have other symptoms. Sometimes the pain might be accompanied by nausea, feeling like you want to throw up.
Yeah.
Some people have a lot of what we call diaphoresis, which is just you're sweating, sweating,
Mhm.
sweating for no reason. I know it can be hot in Grenada, but it's just like an abnormal, just like perspiring, a lot of sweat.
Yes.
You have
Yeah.
an uncomfortable feeling in your chest. Those are some of the things to look for. One of the early warnings that you can kind of see is that if you notice, like when you're exercising, if you notice, like when you push yourself after a certain amount of time, you get like a discomfort in your chest and you have to stop. You stop for a certain amount of time, it goes away. You push yourself that same amount again, it comes back again, it goes away. That's one of the signs that maybe there's a blockage in one of your vessels in the heart. You're not having a heart attack, but that puts you at increased risk of having a heart attack. You can also have sudden onset shortness of breath. All of a sudden, you just can't breathe, and that can be because of the heart too.
Okay. So, in terms of, I liked when you said that, like you let us know exactly what would be the signs of a heart attack, but sometimes it actually, with that pain, chest pain, with that, that feeling, can you then tell us the difference between signs of a heart attack and angina then? So, what is angina? What is this pain, this sudden chest pain?
Yeah, so like I said, the angina, well, there's different forms of angina.
Hmm.
What I described previously when you're exercising. So I know if I walk 1 mile, I get this
Hmm.
pain. It comes in my chest. It lasts for about 30 seconds or a minute. I have to stop. It goes away. That's we describe it as angina. It's a pain that comes on with exertion and it's relieved by rest. We normally call it stable angina when it's predictable. So I know that if I walk for 2 blocks or 2 miles, I get that pain every time on this. Like I can anticipate it because I know if I walk 2 miles exactly at the 2 mile mark, boom, I get the pain. It's not that severe. It's just like an achy sensation. It's in my chest. But I stop, I relax, I take a couple of breaths, and within a minute or so, it goes away. That's angina. What can happen is that over time, it can get worse. You can notice that it gets more severe in nature. You can notice that it happens instead of when I walk 2 miles, it happens when I walk 1.5 miles. So those are things that tells you like something's changed, it's progressing, and I need to seek medical attention.
Exactly. Okay. So there definitely would be an indicator to say, hey, I need to go see my doctor. Something is happening.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we looked at hypertension. We also looked at heart attack, exactly what a heart attack is. What are some of the most common symptoms that we can see? Now, in the event of someone that is a diabetic, right? Would these people usually have the same symptoms as someone that is not? Um, how can we be able to what ways can we educate a diabetic as to heart disease and why they may not have those symptoms to be actually red flag symptoms then to look at? How can we educate them a little bit more so that they would understand?
So with diabetics, it's very difficult because most diabetics eventually they develop some form of neuropathy,
Yes.
and sometimes that can affect how they present in terms of heart attacks. Diabetics may have sometimes what we refer to as silent MIs or silent heart attacks, meaning
Yes.
they just have no symptoms. Like one day they're fine, the next day it's like, oh, I can't really walk that far, I can't really do anything. It feels like I'm exerting myself. I have to do so much just to walk from the bedroom to the kitchen,
Mhm.
like all of a sudden, but I don't remember anything happening, and it could have been a huge heart attack you had, but you
Wow.
just had no signs. So
Yes.
with diabetics, it's a little bit tougher, and being a diabetic always puts you at a very increased risk of having heart disease, especially if you're not well controlled,
Hmm.
especially the type 1 diabetics who've been on insulin their entire life.
Hmm.
You expect to see heart disease earlier in these patients because they've just been a diabetic for so long. Normally, after about for people who are type 2 diabetics, normally if you're not well controlled, within 7 to 10 years, in most cases, you will see some signs of heart disease, some form of heart disease in that population.
Okay. So what would be a goal blood pressure at least for a diabetic to achieve?
So for a diabetic, you should be aiming for a blood pressure less than 120 over 80. You shouldn't want to be in that elevated range. You shouldn't want to be in the high range.
Mhm.
You should be in normal. So lower is better for you. Your cholesterol, it should be well managed. If you're over 30 and you're diabetic, you should have your cholesterol checked because you may more than likely need to be on a cholesterol medication. Even if your cholesterol levels are fine because you're a diabetic and you have cholesterol, it places you at an increased risk. Definitely, 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 and I can't emphasize this more. You should definitely not be smoking. Tobacco smoking is one of the major causes of heart disease. If you're a diabetic and you're a smoker, cigarette smoker, tobacco smoker,
Mhm.
definitely asking to have a heart attack.
Mm. Mhm. Okay.
Most of the patients that we see with heart attacks, um, they're active smokers. Most of them that we see, and those are the ones that come in with like really really bad heart attacks, where they have multiple vessels in the heart blocked. They usually require surgery um, to help revascularize them or to help get back blood flow to the different parts of the heart. It's just really really terrible heart disease.
Wow. Okay. So I'm just going to ask, like in general, when doing a cardiac evaluation on a patient, what is the procedure like? Just in terms of a general cardiac evaluation. So a patient comes in and they would like to know the state of their heart. It could be, let's say, a male, age 36, right? He has some genetic predisposition of cardiac disease. Let's say maybe his father died of a heart attack at age 40, and he's also hypertensive, right? With let's say an optimal blood pressure of like 130 over 80. So, what would be a general test for him? What would be his overview? How would we go deal with that patient? If you can run
So
us
the
through.
So the first thing I will always do is obviously obtain a thorough history, which includes family history, social history. So if they're a smoker, drinker, if their family has heart disease, things like
Yeah,
that, what other medical conditions they have, how they're managed, if they were managed or not.
yeah,
So the first thing I want to do is do a complete history. Then I'll get a complete physical, and in the history, I'll ask them about symptoms that may be subtle hints that there is heart disease. I'll ask them about their exercise tolerance, intolerance. Ask them about difficulties with laying flat and breathing while laying flat, which may be a sign of heart disease. If they get swollen legs, often things like that. I would definitely just thorough history. That's the first. That's the first step. It will let you. It will give you so much information. Then, of
yeah,
course, physical exam, which includes my vital signs. I look for hypertension, and like I said, people that I know have risk factors, and like you said, he has family history of what we call
yes.
premature coronary artery disease or coronary
Mhm.
artery disease happen in a young family member, which is what we
Yeah.
don't normally expect. It
Mhm.
places him at increased risk of having it himself. So I would be very aggressive.
Mhm.
Even though his blood pressure, you said 131,
Yeah, 130 over 80, optimal.
I would try to get that to 120. So I would start him on medications. I would try to lower his blood pressure. I
Mhm.
would check his cholesterol levels, make sure they're not elevated, treat that as well. I would check him for diabetes.
Mhm.
There's a special form of cholesterol that we also look for as well. It's called lipoprotein little a. We check for that as well. So I'll do multiple things. It will all be about risk factor management. If he's a
Mhm.
smoker, definitely I'll talk to him about tobacco cessation.
Yes.
Um, Fortunately for us over here, we have a lot of resources, so I can put them into programs to help them quit. There's medications and stuff that can help them quit.
Okay.
But it's all about risk factors, getting rid of those risk factors.
Okay. Wonderful. And is there any condition in which that you can actually have a young patient, let's say in their 30s, that have like some type of enlarged heart? Does that happen congenitally, or can it just happen as just spontaneously?
So there are many causes for large heart. Like you said, it can be congenital, and by congenital we mean it's something that you were born with. There's
Mhm.
nothing that you did to have that happen. You were just born that way.
Yeah.
There's infections that can happen. I don't think any of those. I don't think any of the infectious diseases that can lead to a large heart, not to my knowledge, exist in Grenada. Maybe they do, and I'm just not aware of it. But I do not believe so.
Mhm.
There are some diseases that exist in South and Central America, that can lead to an enlarged heart.
Mhm.
Um, One of the things that can lead to an enlarged heart, of course, is alcoholism that can lead to an enlarged heart.
Mhm.
There are other diseases and pathologies that can lead to it as well. So there's multiple causes for an enlarged heart. Whenever we see an enlarged heart, we always worry about, like you said, congenital genetics. I want to know if you had any other family members that has had an enlarged heart. If you had any other family members that just died unexpectedly, that I need to worry about something really bad happening with your heart. But it's never a good sign when somebody has a big heart. Like I said, generosity, yes.
Yes.
Actual big heart, no.
No. Okay, wonderful. You know what? Thank you so much, Dr. Cox, for just actually laying out a proper outline for us as to the human heart, as to what it is, how does it work, how does it function. We looked
Problem.
into hypertension. What is hypertension? What is its normal value? How do we detect it? This was just good little tips, good information for us to have a good idea and for our patients to actually understand the basic things that they need to know, in terms of preventative measures. What are the things that we need to do? Lifestyle modification, exercise, diet. I think those are some useful tools and information that I know persons will definitely take them and, exercise, incorporate them into their daily lives. So we pretty much went through a lot. We looked at also the heart attack. What's a heart attack? Even we looked at the difference between angina and a heart attack.
Yeah.
We didn't go into much congestive heart failure, but I know you kind of touched a little bit about it. Because there's a lot of things that where patients found out later on that they had enlarged heart, as you just said, and they did not know. Like for instance, there is no test to say is this genetic. It's just something that happened,
Yeah.
right? Maybe they did an X-ray. And there
Yeah.
they see that they have an enlarged heart. And sometimes they're quite young. Sometimes it could be, which is abnormal, which is an
Yeah.
abnormal finding, So it's like, how do you deal with that unique case? How
Yeah.
would you deal with that unique case that actually has that enlarged heart and the blood pressure just somewhat keeps rising as a result of it? How do you manage that? What would be the main goal for this patient? I know you said you look at the risk factors and so, but what if there is no risk factors? What if there is no genetics? There is no parents are fine. What
Right.
if, so what are some of the things that we can do? How would we attack this case?
Right. So in that case, we'll call it an idiopathic, or when we say idiopathic, we mean we just don't know what caused it.
Okay.
Dilated because the heart is big, dilated, and we call it cardiomyopathy because the heart is not working as it should.
Mhm.
Normally, when that happens, one, we start people on a certain set of medications.
Okay.
Some of these medications, well, not some, all of these medications have been proven to help with survival in those patients.
Okay.
Sometimes it can help the heart remodel itself, and the heart can improve its pump function if the pump is weakened.
Yes.
Sometimes these patients may need other more invasive assistive devices other than medications. If the heart is just pumping and it's pumping too weak, we give them something what's called an ICD, which is something, it's a little device, it sits in the heart. And what it does is it just monitors the heart and see if the heart goes into any bad rhythms. Because having a big heart that doesn't pump well predisposes you to bad heart rhythms. And
Mhm.
those can kill you. And if the device sees that, what it does, it shocks you and it resets the heart back to its normal rhythm. But like I said, with these, what we call idiopathic cardiomyopathies,
Mhm.
they're very difficult. They don't all the time respond to medical treatment,
Mhm.
and it's a very debilitating disease. Fortunately, here in the at least for persons here in the U.S., there are options. For example, there was this young patient that I had last year. He's like my age, and he had what we call a dilated cardiomyopathy. He had a large heart.
Mhm.
And for no reason, he just presented to another hospital because he just wasn't feeling well. His stomach was bothering him. He had some nausea, some vomiting. And that's when we found out he just had a really big heart that wasn't pumping well, and that was leading to all of his symptoms. And then we ultimately found out he just had bad genetics. His mom had the same condition, and there was a gene that she passed on to him, and he ultimately needed a heart transplant, which is what happens a lot of the time with these patients, where they would get a heart from someone who passed away.
Okay, right. Okay. So, to all our viewers and listeners, if there is any question that you would like to share, you would like to send out to ask Dr. Cox, this is a time to feel free. You can send your questions via our YouTube platform, our Facebook platform, or you can even WhatsApp us on our number 403-1031. So if there's any questions or anything that you would like to, or call us, you can also call us if you want to ask questions. You can call. Dr. Cox is right here. He's willing to answer your questions as best as he can.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're giving you sufficient time to call and you could ask him. Yeah, I think this is the best opportunity to ask our future cardiologist for free. So let's
So,
let's
sorry, I only saw the question from the chat. Why is it important to maintain a low blood pressure when you have hydronephrosis? I'm not sure about the low blood pressure with hydronephrosis itself, but I know like we said before, the blood pressure can help protect the kidneys, and the kidneys are one of the organs that gets hit the hardest with high blood pressure. You have like a lot of the patients we see that are on dialysis right now, two of the major causes, one diabetes and two hypertension. In most cases, those are what patients suffered from until before eventually ending up on dialysis. So you just want to protect the kidneys. High blood pressure is never good for your kidneys.
Okay, so Dr. Cox, we have a question via the phone.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, caller. You're live.
Okay. So my question is, why is it important to maintain a low blood pressure when you're suffering with hydrophreноsis?
Okay, yeah. So, sorry, we got to your question, Solid, but we were just trying to address that. With the hydronephrosis itself, I'm not too sure. Hydronephrosis means that your kidneys, there's some blockage in the kidneys, most likely that's causing them to swell up. But like I said, high blood pressure, it damages the kidneys. So if there's something else that's damaging the kidneys, you don't want the high blood pressure to add on top of that. So if you have like some form of kidney injury or kidney damage, anything that hurts your kidneys, you want to do things to protect it. And one of the ways you can protect it is by lowering your blood pressure. Lower blood pressure is better for kidneys.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
No problem.
And Dr. Cox, just as you mentioned, I mean, if there is some type of, as she has mentioned, hydronephrosis, if there's some type of occlusion, naturally the blood flow from the kidney is actually going to be decreased, which is going to tell the body that there's a decrease in plasma flow or blood flow from the kidney, which would then increase the RAS system, right? And that actually increases the pressure because the body works in an equilibrium, right? So it's actually telling the kidney, you need to pump harder. So there's actually what we call a clamping down, or what we would say medically vasoconstriction of these blood vessels, right?
Yep.
So what would happen is that we really need to know the source. What's really the source behind the hydronephrosis? Because it's like once you have hydronephrosis, this now is going to actually decrease the blood flow from the kidney, and it would then be telling the body we need to increase the pressure so that the kidney can push more of that blood out, which makes high blood pressure worse. So it's very necessary to be on hypertensive medication to decrease that blood pressure, right? Because it actually just makes it worse. So I think the main thing would definitely be addressing that hydronephrosis. If it could be
That
due
is
to
correct.
kidney stones, or what is really a stricture, what is really causing that hydronephrosis.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, we still have we're going to wait for other questions or for persons who would like to call in. Again, our WhatsApp number is 403-103-1031. Sorry. And Dr. Cox is here waiting patiently to attack some of those questions. All right. So we're going to wait a little bit. If there is anything, Dr. Cox, that you would like to share with us in the meantime, you can go right ahead.
Yep. Like I started off by saying, it's very important, and I know in Grenada we have I guess we have the belief that we don't need to see doctors unless there's something wrong with us. Like unless I feel sick, unless I feel ill, I don't need to see a doctor, which is absolutely not true. You should always see a doctor. Like we said, there are things that can be happening in your body, even though it's your body, you're not aware of it until it comes to a point where it's too late.
Yes.
And it comes to a point where it's difficult for us to reverse some of the things that happen to your body because of different things. And one of the things, of course, is hypertension. So I just like to encourage everybody that just go see a doctor at least once per year. Go see a doctor. I know a lot of the times we have pop-up clinics in Grenada where we would check like your blood sugar, check your blood pressure for free. When there are events like that, you should really turn up in numbers and just get
Yes.
it checked. Just be aware. Um, like you said, hypertension is a silent killer. You don't want it to get out of hand. You always want to be in front of it. You want to know about it so that you can treat it properly and not suffer from the consequences.
Okay, Dr. Cox, so we have another caller. Go right ahead, caller. You're live.
Good night. Good night. Well, I kind of logged in a little later, so I didn't get much of the program. But I was so encouraged when I saw Dr. Cox on, and I know all I wanted to say was that I'm so encouraged when young people, young doctors are making a difference for our nation and really letting people and letting the people out there, whether young, whether old, be aware of their health and the things that they can do to really help themselves and to, live a healthy lifestyle. I'm just saying good night, Dr. Cox.
Thank you.
To the voice, they'll tell you who it is. I'm not saying on air. Right.
Thank you so much, caller, for that. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate it because that's exactly what I was saying. It's just such a blessing to have Dr. Cox with us, and sharing his expertise, I mean, he is definitely giving up his time and energy so that he can educate. Because how I see it is as you're educating your family, your people, and you're educating everybody at large. So we're really grateful for your time here. We
Okay.
I believe that how I see it, I am so grateful to the diaspora and to the persons that are still reaching out, to actually come on Heavenly Medicine and to share with us because it's one way of giving back to your country, and we really would love for you to achieve everything that you can achieve out there. So at the end of the day, you can still give back one way or the other. And that's what Heavenly Medicine is really all about, is that if you can't be here in person, you're still here with us, and this is a platform that you can definitely share, and we're truly grateful. So thank you so
Although,
much.
although I'd like to be there in person because it's a little cold up here. So.
Yeah. So thank you
Yeah.
so much, caller, and he will know who it is. Eventually, we'll let him know who it is. I think he already has. So we thank you so much for that. So we're still waiting for any other questions. I don't know if Dr. Cox would like to add anything else. But sometimes there are so much unique things that patients sometimes would ask. So it's just we really would like to leave the floor open for any type of questions. In the meantime, if there's anything that you would like to share or anything you would still want to press on, because I really appreciate the fact that you were talking about the going to see a family doctor. It is so important to this that the taboos and all this, especially within the male population, they shy away so much from actually seeing their doctor, and it's until it becomes a chronic situation or it's way too late, right? Then okay, wow, after seeing the feet swollen or it's past the primary stage. Now it has actually gone to maybe sometimes stage 2, stage 3 hypertension, right?
Yeah.
So it's something that we really would like the viewers, our listeners, and the public at large to, go see your healthcare practitioner. Whether it's a general checkup, if you want to check and see, okay, what my cholesterol is like, doc, what my blood pressure is like, what are my risks? I'm getting older. What are some of the risks? What are some of the things that I can do to prevent heart disease? What are some of the things I can do, to prevent diabetes, type 2 diabetes? So as Dr. Cox has been expounding and pressing how important it is for us to see our doctors no matter the age, I really appreciate that. And
Yeah.
I know that our viewers also are very thankful as well.
Yeah, like I said before, most people they believe they're healthy, you feel fine, but you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. So that's why it's important to see a doctor. In other cases, some people, I guess it's like you said, it's a taboo, it's a fear around being like diagnosed as being sick or having an illness. Some people just don't want to experience that. And one of the things that I've learned from my current program director, he always says, um, knowledge is the enemy of fear. Okay, so if you have those fears that maybe I might be diagnosed with this illness, maybe I don't want to be sick, I don't want to find out that I have an illness, things like that. But when you really learn about it and you learn how to manage it, you can, in most cases, things like hypertension, I don't want to use the word easily treated, but there are so many treatment options available for something like hypertension. And the downside of having hypertension, it's so bad. Like you said, it can lead to so many bad things. It can damage your kidneys, damage your heart, damage the blood vessels throughout your body and your brain. There's so many bad things involved with hypertension that it's better to know early so that you can treat it rather than to suffer in silence and just not know until you get to a stage where there's nothing, where the damage is already done. And then we're fighting to try and repair some of that damage.
Okay, doctor. So here we have a question from one of our Facebook viewers. So the question says, good night, doctor. So good to see you both. Thank you, viewer.
Thank you.
Then it says, what are some of the things that can be done to maintain a good heart and by extension avoid heart attacks?
Yeah. So like we said, regular exercise, aerobic exercise. So by aerobic, we mean jogging, running, things like that. That gets your heart rate really up. Not so much like weightlifting, things like that. More running, exercising, aerobic stuff, going to play soccer, basketball, whatever is your poison.
Yeah.
So things like that. If you can do at least 30 minutes of vigorous aerobic exercise, if you can do like 3 to 5 times per week. I know it's a little bit difficult, but it's only 30 minutes, 3 to 5 times per week, if that helps. Healthy diet and exercise, choosing fresh fruits and vegetables over canned food and vegetables, choosing foods that are low in salt, low in fats, because fats is cholesterol. Your body makes its own cholesterol. Whatever cholesterol you eat, it's just extra, and that just goes into the blood vessels around the heart and can block the blood vessels around the heart. The low salt diet to prevent hypertension, maintaining a healthy weight. Those are some of the things that can help protect your heart and its longevity.
Yes. One thing I really appreciated that you mentioned earlier, and it's something that most times we overlook, is when you talked about the foods, the canned foods, because these are usually the processed foods, the foods that have all the preservatives and so, which is very high in salt, in salt concentration. But sometimes we overlook it because we don't pay much mind to it. Like for instance, it could be vegetables in a tin and it's mixed veg or so, but it's vegetables, but not really knowing that it has so much sodium. So I really appreciated when you talked about looking at the nutritional facts at the back of the can and actually seeing the sodium content, because the sodium would be salt. So we're looking at the sodium content to be able to determine, okay, this might be a little bit too much salt for me, and because you wouldn't really taste the salt. But it's there, preserved fluids, it's there.
Exactly. And that's the thing. You don't have to taste the salt for it to be there.
Yeah.
So what happens is that your mouth gets used to whatever salt content you're supplying it. So
Yes.
if you're used to a lot of salt, then your mouth is used to that. So that's why some people will taste something and be like, "Oh, this is super salty," and other people will be like, "Nah, this needs more salt," because
Mm-hmm.
it's what they're used to. And the same way your body got or your taste buds got used to all that salt. If you start cutting back, at first you might be like, "Oh my goodness, this food is like, uh," but eventually your taste buds it will get used to it again, and it will get used to the low salt, and then you'll start tasting that flavor. So the good thing is it works both ways. You just have to be patient. But reading the cans and things like that, it's something we don't think of because, like you said,
Mhm.
I get a can of mixed vegetables, and it's in some form of brine water. So all it's been doing there is in
That's
the salt water. It's just been soaking up all the salt.
that's
I
so
put it in my rice, so I put it in my potato salad, whatever I want to put it
good.
in. And that's just a whole bunch of salt that we just added to our food. And if we had salt that we put in the rice, that's more salt on top of that.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's what ends up happening. All the canned foods, all the canned meats. Like I said, I grew up in Grenada too. I know we like our rice and corned beef. I love rice and corned beef. People people used to say it's our national dish when after Hurricane Ivan.
Yes.
So corned beef, high salt content, our canned tuna, our canned sardines, mackerel, all those things, saltfish, smoker, and all those things have high salt content.
And all our
Um,
confectionaries and sauce, like
yep,
ketchup.
yep, yep, all those things. So I
Mm-hmm.
saw somebody ask, what does it mean to have an irregular heartbeat? So irregular heartbeats can occur for many reasons. We never know until we actually look at what we call an EKG, an electrocardiogram, which is where we hook up these little leads to your body and we see what the electrical activity of the heart is. That's the only way we can say precisely what's happening.
Mhm.
Most people who feel like an occasional skip beats, like every now and then you feel your heart just skip one beat or skip two beats,
Mhm.
it's usually what we call PVCs, premature ventricular contractions. It
Yeah.
means one part of your heart just got a little bit too hasty and tried to pump before it's time,
Mhm.
and it just feels a little bit weird. If you're having irregular heartbeats and like your heart is, it's like you're feeling your pulse and it's going up and down like one to 2 minutes it'll be going like super super fast and it'll just slow down, then it'll get fast, slow down, get fast, slow down. It may be something that's called atrial fibrillation, and that's a serious medical condition. You probably need to see your doctor. Well, not probably. You should see your
Yes.
doctor about that.
Yes. Yes. Hmm. Okay, but it's good that they ask concerning irregular heartbeats, as it's be good as to know what type of heartbeat, or what was said on the rhythm strip, what was said on the EKG or the ECG strip, it'd be kind of good to know, you know, f- a little bit more information, you
Yeah,
know.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Okay. All right. So I don't sure if there is any more questions for Dr. Cox. We kind of left the floor a little bit open. But I think we had a wealth of information from you, and it was clear. We understood everything. I'm sure our viewers really got a clear understanding of some of the, or say, most common cardiovascular diseases that our ethnic group is most plagued with. And, we really appreciate you coming on Heavenly Medicine to share with us and to educate us. You
Yeah,
know,
no problem.
I must say, I really appreciate it. And I just hope that, we have other colleagues that, have been reaching out to us, and we really appreciate you guys actually want to use this platform to come and share and to educate our people. We really appreciate you guys. We love you, and we just want to say thank you and keep doing the good work that you are doing. you know um if there's no other questions this evening, guys, we just want to say thank you to all our viewers. Thank you to all our listeners, whether you are on the actual radio 103.1 FM. We just want to say have a good night. We hope that you were blessed with the information as we looked into the topic, the human heart. We hope that this information will be beneficial to you, be beneficial to your health and your family. And we just want to say a warm good night to you. Have a blessed and fruitful night. Again, I am your host, Dr. Xenia Louison, and we are out for tonight. Remember, your health is your wealth. So keep doing the best you can to make it a healthy life. All right. Blessings. Take good care. All the best.
You didn't come for the strong, you're here for the broken. This is my song of intercession, God. Only you know. Only you know how it feels inside. This pain when you try to hide it. Afraid to cry for help, you smile and drown it out. Only you know how it feels inside. To try and try and try and try and try and fail. Only you know why you say the clock and he's not at home. Out with his boys drinking, 'cause he knows when he goes home and opens that door, it's another night of fighting or silence. Oh, she's cutting up deep, and they just think that she's crazy, but you know better, doc. You know she's being touched in the wrong way. Oh, doctor, can you heal him? I pray, 'cause if you don't, he will not make it. Doctor, can you heal her? I pray, 'cause if you don't, she won't make it till the morning. Doctor, can you heal them? I pray, 'cause if you don't, they will not make it. Doctor, can you heal them? I pray, 'cause if you don't, they won't see the morning. Oh, oh, only you know how she feels inside. These feelings she's trying to hide, that's foreign. It's not supposed to be. Only you know she prayed and prayed. How much she is afraid to get the help she needs. That your blood can set her